you should study other countries to find out what's best for you. So I looked at America very closely. And I understand entirely the arguments that were used for introduction of affirmative action in the 60s, after the riots that took place and the murder of Martin Luther King. And America had to do something, because the segregation and the way that African Americans were treated was just no longer acceptable. And they had to, in a way, get right something that had been going on for many hundreds of years. And they said that the shortest path to do that would be to affirmative action. The question to be asked is affirmative action still relevant today? And Obama is probably the best person to say something about that. And he said, for example, that his children should no longer benefit from affirmative action. And I put the question to people in this, is that what has happened because of affirmative action is you have a very strong African-American middle class now, without a doubt. Everyone admits that. They hold positions of power and so on. Now, what is probably more relevant now is the social class or the income. And what is probably needed now is not affirmative action because, for example, are Obama's children going to benefit or should benefit from it, or should really the child of the poor white American benefit? And the answer is obvious. It should be the poor white American's child who should benefit rather than the rich Africans. And the point, African-American president in that sense, So the point is this, I suppose, is that there is always a place for affirmative actions in certain historical circumstances. But I think it is important that it is reassessed periodically. And I think we might be at the juncture in the United States, and there is still an argument about it, where it should be questioned. But I think more importantly, perhaps now, they should be looking at, like we are looking at quite closely through some of the things we do in Britain, trying to give opportunities to people who don't have them, and usually it is the poor in society. So that is my view about that.
Professor Doctor, is that the way to go? I'm sure if there's an open mic session tomorrow, that's going to be one of the questions.
I think what we have to look for compared to Britain or US, I don't know whether it's called affirmative action. It's just that it's a constitution. So it's quite different, a policy and a constitution. But there are policies derived from the constitution, repackaged in the form of new economic policy and so on. But the root is still the constitution. So we have to address the constitution. So it's not just simply about policy. Because I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about this. If you look, for example, Article 153, there are two parts of it. One part is to protect the wealthy. The other part is to lift up the not so wealthy.
Make the cake bigger.
So the discussion is
for everybody
about one part, not the other part.
I'll leave that discussion for tomorrow for the forum. But I want to end with Clash of Civilizations principles was a lot espoused by the leaders of BNP. But I want to know the thinking of intellectuals in Britain regarding this, because when Samuel P. Huntington came out with that, there's a lot of reaction from this side of the world. So what are your views on that?
Well, Huntington, I think, was a very good example of someone who doesn't understand what he's talking about. And he tried to pose Islam as some monolithic entity, which was diametrically opposed, of course, to Western values as he saw them. And my argument is very simple. I was brought up as a Shia Muslim, and I understand within Islam there are many different ways that Islam works. It is a very broad religion, very many different ways that people practice it. If you look at how Muslims practice it in India, they differ from what they practice in Indonesia, and in fact what Muslims practice in Western Europe sometimes. Okay? And I think that what Huntington was saying was, it was trying to define all Muslims in one identity. And I certainly have an issue with some sects of Islam and the terrorists, for example, and the way that they are using the religion to justify violence and justify murder and so on. That is not the Islam that I was brought up with. So I think that is how intellectuals, actually considered intellectuals, look at it now. They are saying that you cannot look at a religion like Islam in a very single way.
After 9/11 and 7/7, isn't it harder?
Isn't it?
Isn't it harder to?
Of course, it is harder.
Argue against that.
It is the role of intellectuals and those people who can discuss these things to make sure that we discuss these things on the basis of knowledge, not on the basis of ignorance. And it is the duty of politicians to make sure we discuss these things on the basis of knowledge, not ignorance.
What about civil society? The Duke of the Archbishop of Canterbury, for example, what he mooted out, and that gained a lot of debate in Britain, for example. Do you think it's heading that way?
Well, I don't agree with him. He of course said that if you are a Muslim in England, then you should be able to be well, at least one interpretation was that you should have Sharia law principles applied to you, and I do not accept that. But then I'm prepared to have a debate about that, and I think that again he misunderstands the way Sharia law operates, in my opinion, and to make a statement like that. You see, it's very important that as a British citizen, I believe that I should subscribe to British values, and that is a compact I make as well. You know, I came to that country as a refugee, and they gave me shelter. And part of that compact is that I then sign up to what that involves. And I believe that is the case with most people who immigrate. Now, that doesn't mean you have to give up your religion or you have to give up many of your customs, but you have to work within a different framework. All right?
Is that the compact we're looking at in Malaysia, or
we have? That's called social contract, but we don't want to have that contract.
Yeah. Okay.
So, fine. I think you have the right to question this, and I think the debate about it is as good as the social contract itself.
So, any last words for tomorrow before I give the time up?
Well, I just hope that taking the question posed earlier, that it's not about trying to say, well, what is Britain doing and can we apply to Malaysia? It's about looking outward and a bit saying, what do other societies do and how do they deal with that? Well, they maybe or may not be, but it's good to have that conversation, and I think that can only be a positive thing.
Okay. Thank you so much to Professor Dr. Shamsul Amri. Thank you so much to Professor Dr. Aneez Esmail. Thanks to you for watching, and don't forget tomorrow from 3 to 5:30 p.m. Malaysian Institute of Integrity is in Jalan Duta. Just Google Maps it and you can find it easily. And thanks again, both of you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks to you for watching. Hantarkan pandangan anda sendiri kepada Sudut Pandangan @astro.com.my. Sekian, selamat malam dan terima kasih.